Hi guys, welcome back. My name's Scotty. So we're up to part 3 of the reloading series we've got going on at the moment. If you haven't checked out parts 1 and 2, duck back, check them 2 out and you'll see where we're up to. Basically to get you up to speed, part 1 and 2 are basically starting your load development with virgin brass and a fresh barrel, so basically starting from scratch. Where we're up to now is we've got 5-form brass that matches our chamber. In this episode, we're going to be going through prepping that brass, getting it ready to go out and start validating and getting our final data that we're going to use out in the field. We'll go through what measurements we need to start paying particular attention to and keep on top of from here on out when we start going through our reloading processes. And we'll show you everything else in between. So first up, we'll go through the equipment that we're going to be utilizing today and give you a quick rundown on them, and then we'll start decapping. Alright, so the gear that I use as part of my reloading routine and process, to decap, I use a 6 Creedmoor full length die. All I do is simply extend the decapping stem out to where the stem is the only part that's engaging the 6.5 brass. It's simply just decapping and that's it. You can get decapping dies, but I had the 6 Creedmoor die sitting there and it does the same thing. To clean the primer pockets out after I decap, I use a Lyman prime and pocket tool. To measure the shoulders, I use a D400 bump gauge. To full length size, I use a Wilson full length bushing die. The die is a .288. That there will change or could change depending on how you want a full length size. We will go through that when we get to that stage later. To expand the necks back out, I use a .262 expander mandrel, and that's initially going to set the neck tension for me. You'll need a .264 or a 6.5 base to ogive insert, and to clean the brass we're simply using a Hornady ultrasonic cleaner, so basically a wet cleaner, and to anneal we're using the AMP Mark II. Alright, so the first thing that I do is I want to decap my brass. There's 2 reasons why I like to do that first. First of all is once I decap it, I get the Lyman tool in there and just give the primer pocket a quick sweep out, and it's just easier for the ultrasonic cleaner to do its thing and get in there and get all the gunk out. The second reason is so we get an accurate reading when we use our shoulder bump gauge. Depending on how much pressure you have when you fire this case will depend on how violent or abrupt that crater actually is. So it'll actually sit out past where the case finishes, and it can actually give you an incorrect reading when you're trying to measure your shoulder bump. So what we'll do is we'll knock these out. Like I said before, what I use is just a 6 Creedmoor full length bushing die. I just extended the stem out, so the only part that's engaging the 6.5 case is the decapping stem, that's it. So what I'll do is I'll knock 4 or 5 out and we'll get a shoulder reading. Alright, so we'll knock 4 or 5 of these out and then we'll take some measurements. So like I said, the only thing that's engaging this 6.5 case is the decapping pin. And once we do this, we will simply just get an average of what these shoulder bump measurements are, and then what we're essentially trying to do is just give ourselves enough room so we can cam down and we're not forcing that bolt down. So we're probably going to bump it back 1.5 2 thou, and that should be enough for us. Alright, so now we've decapped them, we're just going to zero this out and we're just going to measure what our shoulders have blown out to. Alright, so we've got 1536, 1536, 1536, and 1536. So what we're going to do is we're going to bump that back to 1534. And that's the number that we're going to aim for with our full length sizing die. Alright, so we've gone through, we've ran these here through the ultrasonic cleaner. These are all clean and dried. What we're going to do now is go through the annealing process. So we'll just go through a few things first around annealing. So what you're actually trying to achieve when you anneal is basically increase your brass life, create a standard of brass integrity that can be reached and maintained each time you go through your reloading process. You know it's going to go back to the same state each time you go to reload it. It also controls things like brass springback with shoulder bump and neck tension. Neck tension is a huge contributor to numbers changing and keeping your numbers down. So what the annealer actually does, all it does is heat up the neck and the shoulder of your case. That's all it does, and makes it softer, more malleable. How often do I anneal? So I will anneal every single time I go out and fire. The reason for that is I know that to keep the same results downrange, or the same repeatability downrange, or consistency downrange, I need to maintain consistency and repeatability throughout my reloading procedure. So for me, I can achieve that by annealing and bringing my brass back to the same state or integrity each time. So if I go through and fire my brass, it hardens. Each time I go through and run it through a sizing die, it hardens. So if I do that 4 or 5 times, the integrity is changing of that brass each time I fire it. So I know bringing it back to a standard that I know, then I can expect the same results downrange. So we've got our number 17 pilot. Hopefully you can hear me all right. And we're just using a standard 308 shell holder. All right, so what I'm going to do is just go through and just show you how fast this actually is. All right, so that's one done. I'll just go through and do 4 or 5, then we'll pick it back up when we go do the full length sizing of them, and we'll square that shoulder bump away. Alright, so we have just finished annealing. We're now going to get into the full length sizing process. This is here where people may start branching out and doing a couple of different things. So we've measured the outside diameter of a loaded case, and it measured 0.292. So from here you've got a few different ways of setting the actual neck tension. So the first and easiest way that most people starting out will do will just be a standard full length resizing die with an expander ball. So the good thing about that is it's easy to get, and it's the cheaper option of the 3. The downside is you do overwork the brass a lot more than the other 2 options. Option 2 is a full length bushing die where you use a particular size bushing to set the neck tension. So in this case it was 0.290, which will give you a 2,000 neck tension. The only downside to that is you may need a few different bushing sizes, because you are pushing all the inconsistencies in towards the bullet. When you seat your bullet, you may get different neck tensions, so you will have to sort through the pieces of brass that require a different bushing and leave them to last, and swap those bushings out as you see fit or as needed as you go along. So that's a pretty big downside. I tried that for a little while and basically just got sick of it. Out of 100 you might get around 5 or 10 or something that you may need to keep swapping bushings out. So you do have to batch them sometimes. The third way, which is the way that I do it, is a full length bushing die with an expander mandrel 2 thou under the diameter. It's a 264, so I'll be using an expander mandrel of 262, which will give me a 2 thou neck tension. So they're the 3 ways. I use the last one. Basically, it's better concentricity, The imperfections are getting pushed away from the bullet. I much prefer having as much consistency touching the bullet as possible and have all those imperfections pushed out. And you don't need multiple bushings to do this method, so it's probably the dearer of the three, but in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it's a lot more consistent and precise for what I do. Alright, so what we're going to do now is go in and set our full length sizing die up to close the mouth up so we can use the mandrel to set the neck tension, and also set it up to have our 2/3 thou bump. So what we're going to do is put our full length bushing die in. That's got the .288 bushing in. That bushing size allows me to close the case mouth up, but not oversizing it drastically like the normal standard full length sizing die would. I'm just going to use some Redding lube. And you'll feel the bushing engage the case neck. Alright, now we are looking for a 2/3 thou bump, and we started off at 1536, so we're looking around that 1533, 1534, so we've got 1537, so we haven't really taken much off it at all. I'll just come down a little bit, sorry. So we'll come down slightly. Alright, that went a little bit further. So you got 1530, 1535. So we'll come down a little bit further. And that engaged the shoulder there, and we had a slight bit of overcam. So that should give us roughly our 2 thou, I'm guessing. So we've got, alright, so that was over. So that was 1532, so we bumped that too much, so we'll come back out. And there we go, there's our 1533. So that die is now set up, so I'll just tighten that off, lock that off. Alright, and we'll just do a few more, just to make sure. So you can feel that bushing engaging the case mouth as you come down, or it's just that the bushing has maxed out now, and now I'm just starting to engage the shoulder with the rest of the die, and then you're just camming it over slightly, so you can feel when the die actually engages the shoulder junction, so you know where you are on the case, and then when you have that slight overcam, and 1533. So we know that's set up. Alright, so what we're going to do now is go through, measure overall length, and the semi specs are 1920. What we're going to do is get this set up for roughly 5 or 10 thou taken off, so it should be around 1920. So that's what we're looking for. Around that 1910 or 1915, anywhere between there, I'll be happy. Alright, so that's 1910 there. I'll just do another one. That's 1910. One more to make sure. And 1909. I've got it set at 10 thou off semi spec. So what I'll do now, just go through and chamfer and deburr these, and all that's going to do is allow me to seat that bullet a little bit easier without forcing anything, and it's going to take the edge off anything that I trim off the case mouth. Alright, and this is pretty much going to be the final step. So we've basically closed the case mouth. We have trimmed it to length. Well, what we're going to do now is expand the case mouth back out to set the neck tension. So this here is the mandrel. What we have now is, this should be around 288. So we've got 288, don't know if you can see that there. We've got 288 because that's the size bushing we used. What I'm going to do now is just dip that into some graphite. Work that through, and now this here should be around 290, 289-ish sort of. So there you go, 289.5. So I'll just do another one. So 289, so that's giving us 2 thou neck tension, because our loaded case diameter was 292, and now this mandrel is setting it at 289.5, 290. So we've got 2 thou neck tension, or 2.5 thou neck tension. Alright guys, so that's basically a wrap for part 3. Things to take out of this is find something that works, stick to it. If you do want to change something or play around with other techniques or other routines or something, change one thing at a time. This isn't the be all end all, this is just how I do it and how I approach my reloading process, because I can get the results I want continuously. So if I'm not getting SDs in the single digits, I think I've done something wrong. So I've sort of got it down to a routine where I can yield those results over and over again. And if I get outside that, then I feel like I've done something wrong, and I may revisit a few things and play with a few things. I did go down the route of using a standard full length sizing die with an expandable. Didn't really like it that much. There's a lot of inconsistencies for my liking. I did try using just a standard bushing die to set the neck tension, but found out that it was just too much. I shouldn't say too much work, but there was a lot of inconsistencies with neck tension from batch to batch. So I always found myself having to borrow a bushing off somebody, or going out and purchasing another bushing just to go through and reload up for a match, and then having to sort that brass out so I knew which bushing went with what batch. That's why I ended up sticking with the full length bushing with the mandrel, because the mandrel I found to give me the best results. The next one is going to be seating the primers, throwing the powder, and then going back through and just double checking that powder charge node and the seating depth node, and then we'll push it out and validate that data and show you how to go through the Kestrel and validate that at distance.